All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of the Hustle Underdog podcast, where we teach creators how to hustle and hustlers how to create. All right, guys, so we have a special guest today. Where do I start? I want to say maybe 4 or 5 years ago, I'm on Reddit. I'm in the entrepreneur subreddit, and I'm just kind of hunting. I'm looking for answers. I'm looking for ways to make money. And you guys, you've all been there, right? And I stumble across this thread of this case study where this guy writes day by day, step by step, how he's built a successful business. And I go through the case study. When I say blown away, literally blown away. I start to dig deeper. I'm like, who is this guy? And I end up in a Facebook group. And in the Facebook group, there's hundreds of people who followed this guy's case study, and they've made millions of dollars. And I mean, that just kind of sealed the deal for me. But wait, there's more. I reach out, and this is a couple years ago. I'm still trying to get my feet wet with the entrepreneur thing, and I'm asking questions, right? So I reach out to the guy, and he responds back like he's a real person. And not only is he a real person, he's like really nice about it. Gives me some resources, and I stick around in the group. I post here and there. I'm kind of just playing the scene, and then as I sit around, I see more people become millionaires. So one day in the group, there was a post, there was an opportunity to get maybe 15 minutes or a half hour on this guy's calendar. And I ended up getting in, right? And we schedule a call, and he jumps on the phone with me for a half hour, and he gives me tips on my business. And he's really a nice guy. And I find out he lived in Wilmington, Delaware, my hometown, my home city. He spent some time there. And you know, he gave me tips on my business, things that gave me a completely different perspective on hiring virtual assistants, just things that I wasn't thinking about. And then we hung up and we kept in contact, and he's just been a genuine person. But let's not get it twisted, guys, because our Hustle Underdog podcast, we teach creators how to hustle and hustlers how to create. When it comes to business, this guy's the real deal. 7-figure exits, multiple businesses, shows people how to build businesses. I mean, literally back to back to back to back. Courses, ebooks, software, and unstoppable. If you don't know who I'm talking about already, ladies and gentlemen, Rohan Gilkes.
Jeez, dude. That was wild, bro. But dude, thank you, man. That was one amazing introduction, and it's been really cool. Knowing you all these years, it's been crazy. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, man, it's been crazy, and I try not to lean on you too much because obviously you're busy. You know, I keep up. I look forward anytime you post like, "Hey guys, I got an announcement." I'm like literally back and forth in and out of the Facebook group, like, what's Ro getting ready to say? What's getting ready to happen? And then it's always something that like it's like jaw dropping. Like, let me put my phone down and go tell my wife, like, Rohan's doing it again. It's kind of saying it out loud feels kind of weird, but it's an inspiration, man. I know your story, of course, but share with the people. You know, you started out just like most people. You were an accountant, if I'm correct, right?
Yeah. I was an accountant, and yeah, my first job was in Wilmington, Delaware, right out of college, and I did accounting there. Then I moved to the DC area, and I did accounting there for like another 8 years. So, like 12 years total of accounting finance. Yep.
Nice. And so, accountants make pretty decent money, from my understanding. What made you want to transition out and kind of start venturing and doing your own thing?
I feel like I just wanted more for my life. Like, I guess you could make decent money. You know, you can do like 70,000, 80,000. That was my highest salary as an employee, 80,000 a year. But then I felt like, I was online seeing all these people write blogs about living the digital nomad life, and people all over in Thailand and doing like 80,000 per month, and I'm doing that for a year. I'm
Right.
like, okay, I feel like there is a lot more to life, and I want to explore some of that.
Nice. So tell us about the very first venture. Like, tell us about the first venture, and then also give us the story about how you transitioned away from, getting a paycheck a couple times a month to, relying on your own efforts to pay your bills.
Yeah, so My first venture actually happened when I got laid off. So around right after the real estate downturn, a bunch of companies were laying off in the DC area, and mine was one of them. I got laid off, and around that same time, the lady that used to clean my home at the time, she wanted me to make a website for her. Like she knew that I messed around online, but I never really made any money, insignificant money. And so I told her, well, I can make a website and it will just sit there, or I think your real goal is you want to get more jobs. So
Right.
if that's the case, I can build a website, and do all the marketing and send you more jobs. Make what you would make for your jobs, and I price it a little bit higher and keep something for myself, and we can do that. And she was like, definitely, because that really was her goal: make more money, not make a website.
Right.
Um, so she agreed. I built it out. I found a guy in on this site called Scriptlance. It kind of rolled into Upwork, I think. This site called Scriptlance. It's kind of like Freelancer, Upwork, one of those sites.
Hmm.
And he built it for me for $450, my first website for that business. And I put it online, and I got a customer the first day.
Wow.
Basically, it's a person in DC wanted their home cleaned, and that I kept going. I kept going. I got another job because I wasn't making enough money to support myself. I got another job, and I stayed at that job for 6 months. No, 8 months. By the end of that 8 months, I was at about 45,000 per month, and
Wow.
then that business has since done a little over 15 million. Yeah, it's kind of
Nice,
crazy.
man.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on the success. You mentioned getting your first customer
Mhm.
on the first day, so the site hadn't been up long enough to rank. How did you get your first customer?
Oh, I just posted a site on Craigslist. Yeah, that was it, man. And I was like, wow, this could actually be a thing.
So Rohan, tell us a little bit about your next company, Launch 27.
So in building Maize and Black, I knew that I wanted this business flow to work in a certain way. Like the customer had to come, book online, pay with their credit card, and certain things had to happen, like text message reminders and email reminders. I wanted this business flow that would look like what it would look like if Uber did it, right?
Right.
And there wasn't software built in a way that really worked. So I ended up building software to manage that company. And then other people heard about it. I talked about it, and people were like, hey, we would like to use your software. So I actually turned that into a SaaS product. And that's what became Launch 27. Yeah. And that business, we grew to a couple $1 million a year, and we sold last year. Yeah.
Nice, man. So I know the answer, but for the audience, did you code it yourself, or like had you had any experience with building a SaaS company, or how'd you go about like the mechanics, the back end?
Man, I, funny enough, at that time, I didn't even know what the acronym SaaS meant. I didn't even know what what that was, bro. I
Right.
just knew that I could probably get people to pay me a monthly amount to use it.
Hmm.
And so, yeah, I can't code. I'm not a developer. So what I did is I went back to Upwork, and I found a development team in Russia, and they built the first version of the company. And we got our first customers, and then we used the money from those customers to build up the entire product. Yeah.
Nice. So guys, everybody who's listening, just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean you can't get it done. You just got to have the knowledge, the willpower, and the resourcefulness to go and find somebody who can do it. Get your first customers, and then you can always reiterate later. But don't let not knowing how to do it stop you on the front end.
Mm-hmm.
So I stumbled into your web of creation by way of Reddit. What made you post the thread to Reddit, and then, you know, tell us about kind of how you felt with that, because if I'm not mistaken, it's top 10 in the entrepreneur subreddit, right?
Yeah, it's still like number 3 or something after all these years. Um, so at the time, and even now, I typically end up living alone, and living alone and building a business, like it's a difficult thing just to stay like mentally up every day and not to get down. And not to get into a depressive state or anything like that. Like it's difficult for me at
Right.
least. So what I like to do, and I discovered that with Reddit, is I like to build in public. So if I'm building something, I want to post about it. I want people to read it. I want people to follow along. And they kind of keep me accountable to wake up every day, to work on it, to keep them updated. And it really, really helps me to see things all the way through. So it's mostly for my own encouragement to know that people are watching, versus just being in my living room by myself.
But it works, right? If I had to guess, a lot of people, because Reddit is one of the most highly visited sites in the country, if not the world, they visit entrepreneur, right? They're already looking for these type of things. They stumble on your case study. They probably spend maybe a half hour to an hour reading through it, and then they join your Facebook group, and then they kind of take it from there. So how often do you see people siphon from or come from Reddit and then end up in your Facebook group?
Yeah, so the entire Facebook group is, I mean, not the entire, but I feel like probably 80% of that group came from Reddit. Yeah,
Nice.
so it really, really works. And then something that I think will be useful for your users to think about is whenever I'm building a business, I want to think about how can I build a community around it, whatever it is. So what that does is one, it has like ready-made customers are there waiting for the product to be ready,
Hmm.
and two, like people end up like helping each other, and it keeps the churn down if people see themselves as a member of a movement versus just some person using a piece of software or something. So I always try to build a Facebook group and siphon in from Reddit or Medium or Hacker News or Twitter or whatever you can siphon from to
Hmm.
build a community. It works really well. Yeah.
Speaking of Twitter, I've seen in the recent months that you've been really active on Twitter, and it seems like you took a page out of your own playbook because you're posting different threads and business ideas on Twitter, and definitely gaining traction and growing a following there as well. How are you enjoying sharing content on Twitter?
Yeah, Twitter is, man, I don't know what I've been doing all this time. Like I should have been on Twitter all this time as well. I only got on around COVID, like during quarantine, because I was like extra bored.
Hmm.
But then I got on, and then I started to connect with all these like really interesting people and VCs, and reconnect with people like yourself. And I'm like, yeah, Twitter is dope, and you can, whoever you can think about that you would like to contact or network with or anything like that, you can just tweet that person right there. It's like it's pretty wild when you think about it.
Incredible. You just posted not too long ago about you made a website about your threads. Can you tell the people what the name of the website is, just in case they want to follow some of your threads?
Yeah, so rohansthreads.com. So Rohan, Rohan S, and then THREAD.com.
Cool. Thanks, man. So what's next? I'm seeing something that looks like a I don't want to call it a Gumroad competitor, but I'm seeing something where it looks like you're making something for creators. Can you tell us about your new project?
Yeah, so that's one of my new projects. It's called Get Jasmine. And Jasmine, yeah, I think it's accurate to call it a Gumroad competitor. But
Okay.
I think what we're going to do is just make it free.
Nice.
Yeah, we're just going to make it free, where you can go on and sell your courses and your ebooks and your music, or anything like that, any type of digital content, and we just make it free. And payments would be through Stripe. So you just need a Stripe account, connect it, and the money goes straight to your Stripe account. So I think that's what's coming. And then I'm also working on a product called Dream Desk, which is a CRM for like your phone calls, your emails, your text messaging, any of your customer communication that you would use Dream Desk for. So those are my two main projects right now. Yeah.
Nice, man. Incredible. So we'll definitely keep an eye out on that. And I do want to go back and touch on something, dude. So the building in public thing, I that's kind of why I'm doing hustleunderdog.com. So the podcast is an extension of the site, but the site is really just a play to hold me accountable. I see so many people have success online, and I don't want to push this idea that it's easy, because you and I both know it's far from easy.
True.
But it, in a lot of cases, I would say most of the businesses aren't necessarily rocket science. You just kind of have to have the fundamentals down. I have a few. So some of the work that I do in the city, Wilmington, Delaware, is revolves around kind of showing kids hope. And my other business, Out of the Ashes, what we do is me and my father, we go different schools, community centers, and we show them hope. We were apart for a long time. We rebuilt our relationship, and then we kind of use that as a platform to show other kids, like, hey, just because you don't have your dad in your life doesn't mean that down the line he won't be back, and it doesn't mean that down the line you guys won't have a really good relationship. It takes
Yeah.
time. But on the flip side of that is, some of these kids, while they're waiting to get to that point of like healing with their parent, um, they don't have an eye for business, or they don't necessarily see the opportunities out here. So with the blog, or the site, what I'm doing is I'm running various case studies, nothing long term, but I want to call it quick hits, but I don't want to like discredit it. I'm showing people different ways to build different online side hustles, and I'm just
Yeah.
kind of giving them step by step, play by play, how I build and how to get to a certain point, just to kind of show them like, hey, you can do this too. So if you ever stumble across it, man, and you feel like, God, this looks a lot like something I would do, it's because I stole it out of your playbook, dude. 100% full transparency.
That's awesome, dude. That's like the best compliment ever, is to take it, run with it, and do something dope. Yeah.
Yeah,
Awesome.
I'm trying, man. I'm trying to be of value to the people.
Yeah.
So you give a lot of advice around entrepreneurship, and I feel like you have a pretty particular philosophy on like starting a business. And I've read your ebooks, so you talk about things like, or you probably hear this all the time. Oh, I want to start something, but let me go get my LLC, and they have no customers.
Hmm.
Or I want to get into this space because there's no competitors, not realizing that competitors are kind of like a form of validation. What are
Okay.
some of your advice for, you know, um, an entrepreneur who's listening to this, and they, as soon as they turn this off, they say, you know what, I'm going to try something. What's some of your advice to kind of get them to their first sale without going through a bunch of hoops?
Yeah. So I like how you phrase that. Is like get into your first sale. So so in the past, like when I was thinking about building a business, like I would think about all these policies and procedures and steps and blah 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 and research and all this stuff I would do to like almost like pre-business the business, like all this busy work.
Right.
um, and all that would do would either a convince me that it wasn't going to work, or b just push me starting way into the future. Now everything is around getting to the first sale. So before I even lift a finger, I'm like, is what I'm doing actually contributing to my first sale? And if
Hmm.
not, let me just wait. I don't have I don't have to have this massive protection of my revenue or something when there's no revenue. So I skip all that stuff and say, let me get to the first sale, and let me build a business where each one of those sales is significant. So I wouldn't start a business where each transaction is like $5 or something. So I say, okay, it has to be $50 or more. So that makes me really disciplined around the types of businesses that I start. Then I also say, I want something, especially if it's going to be my first business, where
Hmm.
I can have that first customer in like 30 days, maybe 60 days from now. So it really keeps me disciplined and stops me from chasing after crazy ideas that I can't monetize until 2025 or something. Like I stay away from that stuff.
Good, man. We definitely appreciate the advice. So, any books or resources that you would recommend for someone who's going to turn this podcast off, and they're going to be inspired, and they're going to want to go start their own thing?
Yeah, so I really like these two books. This is one book called Made to Stick, And that book is about basically communicating in general, like communicating online. So it's really useful to think about how you position your company, how you think about branding and customer acquisition, but really through communication, which is what I do. Like I try to build content that leads to sales, and Made to Stick really it's really good on that topic. And then the second book is a book called Launch by Jeff Walker, and it's a really practical book. Like I like books where I'm not spending half the book reading about the person's life story, but I'm getting like this actionable content, and it's really about how to launch almost anything. And between those two books, I think your folks will learn a lot. I definitely did. Yeah.
Appreciate it, man. And guys, well, I'll definitely make sure to put this in the show notes, so don't worry. So, bro, you've given us so much information and so much value, and although the audience is small for now, there's at least one person out there guaranteed, because he hit me on Twitter. I want to shout him out. Sam, shout out to you, man. This one's for you. He hit me up and he asked, he said, how the interview with Rohan go? I said, I didn't have it yet, but it's coming. So there's at least one person out there that's going to hear this and is going to be excited, and I wanted to just shout him out, man. And I also, dude, your kindness and just the level of transparency and all of the lives that you've changed. I mean, just off the top, about how many millionaires do you have in your group right now who started cleaning businesses based off of your philosophy and your guidance?
So a number that I know that I know like the actual number is this. So when we sold Launch 27 last year, and Launch
Hmm.
27, for people that are listening, that's a piece of software I built that all these cleaning companies and all local service businesses use to manage their operations. So it processes their payments, their credit card processing, and all that stuff goes through Launch 27. So when I sold it last year, it was processing 100 million per year.
Mm.
And so that gives you an idea of the type of success people have had. And those people came mostly from Reddit and from Facebook. And most of them didn't have a business; they started from scratch. And that's the number as of last year. Yeah.
Incredible, man. One more thing, because a lot of people starting out, especially if they don't have any guidance or mentors or anybody that they can really trust with the idea, they'll jump into things, and the first bump or hiccup in the road, they'll get discouraged and they'll stop, and you say, you know what, maybe this isn't for me. Can you share briefly just one story of when things just weren't going right, maybe with Maids in Black, where something might have just went so haywire, like that kind of scared you, and how you overcame that feeling?
Yes, actually. This one just came to mind, but there's a lot more. Business is difficult, but the rewards are so big if you can push through it, man. So what was happening in DC? So that's where my cleaning business was. It was really my first big business, and I was learning as I was going. I didn't have anybody to show me the way. I was just trying to figure things out and googling everything. But at one point, we were taking checks and cash. So my teams in any one day could have like $5,000 in cash on them, like across my teams, and
Hmm.
it could be like as high as $8,000 in cash and checks and so on. And what was happening was our folks were starting to get robbed.
Sheesh.
Crazy to think about, bro. But yes, yes, because we were in DC. People think DC, but there's some neighborhoods in DC that are tough. Anyhow, our folks were trying to get robbed, and I had to cancel all these bookings. Apologize. I was losing customers because we had to cancel based on location. All this stuff was going on, and I felt like we were at uh, a pivot in the road trying to figure out what to do. So what we ended up doing was going to credit card only. And at that time, that was kind of unheard of. Like people expected you to come to their house, do the job, and then get paid in cash or a check. We had to say
Right.
credit card only, and we had to stick to our guns. We lost a few customers, but I think that people ended up understanding and people started coming back. But that was a time where I felt like it was the closest to the business not working out was that period. So I just had to make the real cold decision, credit card only. had to say no to all the people that were pushing back. The business grew, and now we're here. Super random, but that came to mind. Yeah.
Thanks, man. Appreciate you sharing that because I just don't want anybody. I just don't want anybody to give up prematurely, you know. So
Yeah. If I can say one more thing really quickly on that, on the giving up prematurely. Like when I'm thinking about building a business, I'm thinking like I'm in a desert and I'm trying to find water, right, to
mhm.
survive. And if I were actually in a desert, I would never be like, you know what? I'm too tired to look for water today, or I'm going to get up and I'm going to look because it's like survival. You know what I'm saying? So it's really difficult to make yourself feel that way if things are comfortable. If you have a good job, if you know that your mortgage is paid or your rent is paid, it's kind of hard to will yourself into that space. So I definitely get it, and I don't give people a hard time if they're not able to like push through that feeling of comfort. But what I try to say is like, you know, if you can imagine that the things that you think right now are crazy ideas are things that you could never have, or you could never go to Bali for 5 years if you want to, or you could never buy your mom a home, or you could never do all these crazy things. Those things are so possible. Why? Because I've done them. And just a few years ago, I was just sitting behind a cubicle desk at an accounting firm on U Street in Washington D.C. So my what I try to tell people is, you know, think of the other side. Why you like try to will yourself into an uncomfortable place if possible, and help you to think about what the larger goals are. It's not really going to be the money, but it's going to be like family and time and health and being able to give back. Those larger goals,
Mhm.
those are what kind of really keep me going. So yeah.
Man, I think that's a perfect note to end on. Thank you so much, Rohan, for just you know just taking the time out to do this interview. Originally, guys, I just wanted to promote Rohan's stuff. I was going to get another guest, and I literally was just going to open the podcast up by saying, "Hey, if you haven't heard of this guy, you need to go check out X, Y, and Z." But through talking to Rohan, he was like, "Nah, man, like bring me on." So it just kind of worked out, and you know,
Yeah,
I can't thank you enough, dude. So
for sure,
um,
bro. Thanks for
uh,
having me, man. Thanks for
hey,
having me.
no, not a problem, ladies and gentlemen. That's the Hustle Underdog podcast. Hopefully, we've taught you something. I know I wrote down a lot of things, guys, and if you have any questions, just hit me up, and you know, we'll compile them and put it out on the site. I'll make sure to share Rohan's all his adventures, and I'll share the books that he recommended, guys. And I'll talk to you all soon. Thanks, Ro.
All right, thanks, man.